Good morning, Uncle Lou here. Yeah, it's me, Uncle Lou. Now there's a lot of discussion right now going around about who the greatest quarterback of all time is, the GOAT. You know, all your usual suspects have been named already. Your Joe Montanas, your Tom Brady's, your Peyton Manning's, your Dan Marino's, on and on and on. And, I'll be the first to admit that these guys are good quarterbacks. But to say that they're the greatest of all time is beyond the pale, and ridiculous too. You can Google beyond the pale, to figure out what that means. These guys are not the GOAT. They're not the greatest of all time. And there's one simple reason why those guys are not the greatest of all time. None of those people, none of them, was ever good enough to win a game for the Atlanta Falcons. You have any idea how hard it is to win a game for the Atlanta Falcons? So those guys are not the GOAT. So who is the GOAT? Matt Ryan? No. Michael Vick? No. Chris Miller is the GOAT. Chris Miller is the GOAT, people. Falcons quarterback, late 80s, early 90s. This guy is the greatest quarterback in the history of mankind. And it's not even close. And before you jump down to the comment section to tell me how wrong I am, keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. Chris Miller was so good. The Falcons traded Brett Favre to keep him. That's how good Chris Miller was, better than Brett Favre, a future Hall of Famer. So you tell me, how many of Tom Brady's backups were future Hall of Famers? How many of Peyton Manning's backups were future Hall of Famers? How many of Dan Marino's backups were future Hall of Famers? None! Chris Miller's the greatest quarterback ever. He was so good, we drafted Brett Favre in 91 and shipped him to Green Bay. We didn't send him to LA. We didn't send him to Miami, Chicago, New York, some glamorous pro football town. No, we shipped him to Green Bay. That's how little we thought of and needed Brett Favre, because we already had the GOAT, Chris Miller. We traded Brett Favre to Green Bay for 6 pounds of cheddar cheese, and we got the better of the deal. Chris Miller's the GOAT. You can keep all your Super Bowl rings. You can keep all your playoff appearances and playoff victories. Chris Miller is the greatest quarterback in the history of the universe. In the history of the galaxy. There's not a better quarterback anywhere in the Milky Way than Chris Miller. So stop with all this Captain Obvious talk about Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Dan Marino, Troy Aikman, Roger Staubach, Otto Graham. Really? Otto Graham? Otto Graham never won any games with the Falcons. You have any idea how hard it is to win a game for the Falcons? You're talking about a franchise that's basically the bad news Bears of NFL football. And Chris Miller managed to win a few games here and there. Chris Miller's the GOAT. Good morning.